welcome to my latest watercolor video. This week we are not meeting at Mount's Botanical Garden. They just didn't have a room for us. It happens every once in a great while. Things going on with the county and just they get overbooked. It happens once or twice a year. But that's okay. We're going to do a video today and I'm going to release it to not only my Mount students but all of my students and my friends from Urban Sketchers, just to see what we're doing in our classes. With that, I'm going to show you what we are going to be working on. It's this photo from Loggerhead Key in the Dry Tortugas. Fairly simple composition, square. I've simplified it a little bit, made some design choices I want to talk about. The crown of the big cloud, the massive cloud that I think that the painting is mostly about, that and the one palm tree. I'm moving the crown over to the right just to give it a little bit stronger composition. The palm fronds in the bottom right corner, I'm eliminating those. They reference trees that are outside of frame and I don't think we need them. I'm simplifying the main palm to one palm tree rather than 3 or 4. That's a choice. You don't have to make the same choice as me. And we are going to move those 2 small palms over to the left a little bit. I think it just balances the composition. I also left 2 little spots. You can barely see it next to the left-hand lower palm there, that there is some water showing. So I left 2 little patches where I'm going to show some cobalt blue water showing through. I just thought it would be nice. And that's pretty much it. Colors-wise, I'm going to have some sap green loaded up on my palette. I'm going to have some transparent orange and some diox purple. So that's the secondary primaries that I tend to use a lot of. There's no getting around blue. I need some blue for the sky. We're going to use some ultramarine blue. At the top, I might add some neutral tint just to darken it. It's because it's darker at the top. And process-wise, we're going to paint the sky and the cloud first, and then the tree and the ground plane. And that's probably how we're going to break it up. So if you haven't sketched your painting yet, take a few minutes and sketch it out. I didn't think we needed a grid for this one. It's really very, very simple shapes. So pause the video and go ahead and sketch it out. And then we'll meet back up here in a few minutes. Alright, we are back and we're ready to get started. I'm going to switch over to the live camera of the painting and we'll start going on that. So here we go. The pencil lines are a little light, but that's okay. I mean, the subject is the palm tree and the clouds. I'm going to start with the blue of the sky. And I'm going to mix up a little ultramarine for that. And my plan is to not necessarily make it as dark as it's going to be later. The reason is pretty simple. I'll use it again later to define the cloud tops. So I don't want to get too dark with it now, but I do want to get started with it. And I want to start with it on the soft side. We'll come in and harden up the edges when we come in on the second pass through it. So I'm just mixing up a little ultramarine blue, adding a little water to it. On my palette, like I said, I have some orange, I have some purple, and I have some green. Those will make appearances mixed into my colors as I go. And I'll have some yellow ochre going for the bottoms of the clouds. I'll use yellow ochre gold So far that's orange, purple, yellow ochre, gold. I have some jadeite green on my palette, and I have ultramarine. And that should be plenty to get us started. Good little puddles. Always mix up more than you think you need. You don't want to run short when you're painting. That's like the biggest sin, I think, when you're painting. I'm gonna hit the top of this paper with a little bit of water. The paper, by the way, is the Bao Hong Master's Choice 140 cold press. I do have to say that as far as cold press paint papers go, it's pretty textured. It's not wimpy texture at all. And I'm basically just bringing this down to the light cloud shape that I drew in. I probably should be using a little bit bigger brush, but that's all right. Don't have to draw the cloud in as exact as in the photo. Play with it a little bit. The sky will be darker up at the top, but it's a small sliver of sky, so it does not have to be all that differentiated. I was going to bring this down and use cobalt teal, and I think there will be some cobalt teal in the bottom because skies get lighter and they get warmer towards the bottom. I don't like to add yellows into my blues to make them warmer as they get lighter. You have a tendency to run green then. I just don't like the look of that. I've basically got the top cloud in, or the top sky in, and I'm going to spray it a little bit more, and then I'm going to use up a wadded up tissue to do some blotting at the edges. Okay. Good enough for now. I'm going to focus on the clouds because what I want to do is paint everything that's in the back and let that dry, and then we'll put the midground in, and the last thing we'll put in is the tree. So I need a grayish color, but I want to toggle it between warm and cool. So it's going to have some yellow ochre, some ultramarine, and some purple in the mixture, and then I can always reach into my palette to shift those around as I need to. But it's just a nice gray, running a little bit on the warm side. Here I'm looking at the photo and just looking at where some of those darker shapes are and laying them in. And in the process of this, we're going to move between wet and dry and back and forth, and start mushy and get detailed as we go. I think that's how we're going to approach this. The bottom of the cloud has a cooler dark shape in it. Go right over the tree. That tree is going to be dark, although not black later. It is silhouetted, but we're not going to make it black. First thoughts on this paper. The Bao Hong Master's Choice cold press is equivalent to what I think some roughs are. I'm getting, I'll put it down here off the edge of the painting. You can see I can get some really nice dry brush marks with this paper. Kind of nice. I'm going to wet down what I put in already and break it up. Most of this cloud is not going to be pure white. There's going to be some tone to it, a little tiny bit, and we can always come back in and blot back too. So what I'm going to try and do is define the shapes of the cloud loosely first, and then get more specific with it as I go. Clouds generally have a darker patch at the bottom, and they're lighter at the top where the sun is hitting them. But there's also almost always little passages of warm that you can drop into those gray mixtures to give them some identity. Now let's see. This bottom shelf here connects. Oops, that's kind of blue. Let me tone that down just a little bit. Make it a little bit gray. It's okay to bluer down there in the bottom and allow it to mix in. Hold your brush at the back. Try not to hold it like a pencil in this case. And tap in and change the angle of attack. It's going to get a little bit cooler as it goes down. So tap in a little bit of blue into there. While this bottom is still wet, I'm just dropping in a little bit of a more bluer gray into that shape. And try not to have hard lines here, so just break them up with your brush, damp brush, sweep them up a little bit. Don't forget to put in whatever that tone is behind the palm tree. You don't want the palm tree to stick out because there's nothing behind it, and it will be much darker, much darker. Leave yourself plenty of white space too. Don't skimp on that. My tendency is to do too much with my clouds, and there are tricks I can do to help me stay away from that. I can drop in some water droplets to help mush it a little bit. It helps join the front to the back of it. I'm gonna let this sit for a minute and see how I feel about it. This is a passing storm cloud that is probably going to burst any minute. There, that's starting to feel pretty cloud-like. I like it. I want to put in the bottom of the sky, and it's going to have some of that ultramarine in it, but I'm also going to put some cobalt teal to warm it, and I want to neutralize it a little bit too, so I'm going to grab just a drop of that orange. Really, I'm trying to gray this up a little bit, but I still want it to have some character. That's probably too dark. It'll work as the bottom of the clouds. So I can drop this in a few places. bit in here, maybe just a touch here. So I need to get back to that grayer color and add plenty of water to it. Sorry, I forgot to turn off my ringer. That's better. I'm going to add some water to that. And I can bring this straight down through the tree. We can always harden up the edge if we need to later. It looks like there's some rain in the distance, which we can mimic by right through that wet stuff, just pulling down a little bit with a little bit of that darker mixture. And it kind of comes in at a little bit of an angle, not straight up and down. Use my watered up tissue here and just take it. I can go right into that water level. That's fine. I'm not going to bring it down into the ground. It's a little bit warmer and a little bit lighter than the top sky. It's a little mushy here. I think that's okay. We can always still come in with our Sorry, my easel is bouncing a little bit. All right. Again, I'm working from the back of the brush. I'm just trying to pick out some of those shapes that where it's a little bit darker. The paper's starting to dry out a little bit. Just a little spray of water is enough to make it happy and allow you to keep moving. What I am going to do right before I shut down for the moment is this lighter under sky where the rain is coming down. I'm just going to drag a damp brush through it in a couple of places because that rain breaks up a little bit. And you see the light coming through the clouds. It's a little bit like what I see, but it's also just adds a little bit of interest. So I'm going to do that just because, well, it's my painting, and I want to. And right before I sign off for a few minutes, I'm going to take this wet brush and bring it right down into the ground plane. That green is going to be darker than the sky, and why give myself a hard edge that I got to fight with? So I think that this pulling out of tone worked pretty well. The clouds are kind of impressionistic. I'm gonna see if I can start to define this shape a little bit. The clouds are kind of wet, so I'm going to wait. Come back when we do this. This hole in the clouds we'll add in when we can get a little bit of a hard edge on it. So far so good. I definitely want to darken down that sky, but I want to do it after I've given this time to set up a little bit. So the only thing I want to do is I'm going to mix up a little bit of yellow ochre gold with a little bit of orange and a whole lot of water, and just look if there are any places that I can just, it's kind of already dry, I'm going to drop in a little bit of warmth at the tops of these darker bits. Just for interest. Not everywhere, not too much. Maybe right through here. I'll just add a little tiny bit of that warmth. And if it's too much, just hit it with your tissue or your paper towel. Alright, I'm going to stop the video here. I'm going to let this dry for about a half an hour. And then I'm going to come in and finish up the sky to darken the top of the sky. And maybe even scrub out a little bit more of the rain that's coming down. And then we can move on from there. I got a pretty stiff brush here. I'm going to wet it, take most of the water out, and see if I can exaggerate that rain coming down. In just a few places. I think what I'll have to do is just darken at the edges a little bit to make that stand out. But all right, we're going to stop here for about 15 minutes, 15-20 minutes. You won't notice it because I'll flip the video back on. But just give that sky enough time to dry out so I can work on darkening this to push the clouds out of us and start to define those edges. Darken this a little bit, at which point we'll stop again. I'll put in the foreground and then we'll finish with the tree. See you on the other side. All right, we are back, ready to do some more work on our painting. I can't remember if I mentioned where this is from. This is the Loggerhead Key in the Dry Tortugas from when I was there in 2020 as artist in residence. It was very normal for the skies to change rapidly, go from sunny and perfectly clear to violent storms almost in a matter of minutes. They would pop up and happen and go back to being sunny again. I think it's got to do with where we were. We weren't exactly on the border of the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico, but we were close. We were definitely in the Gulf of Mexico, but that whole region with that warm water in September is just a boiling kettle of storms that pop up. Lightning storms every night, although they were almost all of the lightning was in the clouds. I didn't get a whole lot of good shots of, lightning strikes. Couple. But I had to carry my camera with me everywhere I went, every minute of the day, because I never knew what was going to happen. So let's switch back to our painting. Here we go. And it's looking good. I'm happy. I do want to darken this area. And I like what's happening in the photo where it is not a pure ultramarine blue. Ultramarine blue is a nice dark blue, but it is a little bit on the red side. So rather than adding neutral tint to it, which would continue to keep it in that chroma, I've added a little bit of orange to neutralize the blue and darken it up. I'm going to wet my brush, come in here and lay in this color. Yeah, that's going to help pop those clouds forward. So just keep ultramarine. Mix a little bit more of that up. Add a little bit of orange to it. Just want to make sure I have plenty. Hit the top row first. Just get right across it. Don't wait. Just like you're doing a flat wash. I'm not holding enough in here, and the rough paper doesn't give me a bead quite as succinctly as, say, the Arches cold press. And I'm just going to I'm going to add some water to that. It does get lighter as it comes down. And I'm gonna just start to define the shapes of my clouds. Again, I'm holding the brush way back. I'm looking for the shapes of the clouds. I don't want this to dry out on me, so I'm gonna just run a little bit of water right into that line. I want to get this in and down, and I can always soften up some of those edges if I need to, but just look at how those clouds are now popping off of the paper. That's exactly what I was trying to make happen. These little indents that I made, I think I need to take some tone out of them, so I'm just putting some water on my brush. Just as they get further into the clouds, they start to get a little bit lighter. And then I'll take a damp brush and in a couple of places soften it into the sky, but not everywhere. I want to have hard edges too. That looks good. That looks much better. I'm glad I put the blue in first, even if it wasn't dark enough, because it gave me a roadmap, something to look at, and everything in painting is making comparisons and adjustments. So just by putting in something that was lighter than I needed it to be, gave me how I was going to handle it as I came into here. I'm going to exaggerate this split there. Alright, that's looking really strong. I'm happy with it. If this is still wet enough, I can still drop in a little bit more of this blue where I wet it down. There we go. It looks like there's a little hole here with the sky peeking through, so I'm just going to add a little bit of that here. Try not to be too correct with the shapes. Probably one more spot over here. Try to be organic with these shapes. They just kind of happen. They come, they go, they disappear. There we go. Now, I feel like this mass is a little bit darker holding the rain, and that should look a little lighter. So I'm just gonna come in, get my brush wet, take some of the water out, and just build this here up a little bit. Right down into here. Okay. Same goes for right here. And bring it right down into here. Maybe connect this. You don't have to try and match the cloud shape exactly. It's almost better if you get it just how you feel it should be. Try to soften the tops. Harder shapes will be, at least on these rounded up bits, the darker bits, they'll get softer and lighter as they go up. I do feel like I need a little bit more tone behind. Most of this is gonna disappear behind the palm tree, just to push that cloud forward, and then just soften up. Alright, I'm feeling pretty good about my sky. I would like to neutralize and darken that more teal color at the bottom, at least at the edges. I'm gonna come in and while this rainy area is still wet, I'm going to grab that flat brush again and make that same move and try to pull out some of those rain bands that are happening. There. All right. I think we've got the sky done. This is looking pretty good. I am going to stop here and I'm going to let this whole mass dry so that we can work in our ground with some warmer greens and some yellows, and then pop that tree in there and we'll be all done. This is kind of a quickie. It's a great way to loosen up and to work on your tree shapes and to work on your cloud shapes without them being overwhelming. If your clouds feel like they're overworked a little bit, you can just hit them with a little spray, not too much. All right, I'm going to leave it here. I'll be back in a little bit. We are back. Time to, I think, finish this thing up. We're pretty close. We're going to put the ground plane in and then the tree, and that should do it. Going to do some dry brush work on the palm tree, on the fronds. I think that'll look good. Help give it that sense of motion. This Bao Master's Choice cold press paper is probably the roughest cold press I've ever seen it, and it's taking the dry brush really well. So I'm going to knock out the ground plane. First thing I'm going to put in is that cobalt teal. I want to get that jewel color in there. Then we'll throw in our greens, or maybe while that's drying I'll throw in the top of the tree, and then we'll do the ground, the shadow of the tree, and the rest of the tree. All right? So let me switch this. All right. Back to our painting. And I'm just going to clean up a well on my palette. You know, when you're going to work with a color that's a jewel tone, like the cobalt teal, don't give yourself a break and put it onto a nice clean part of the palette. You don't want to have it mixing up and contaminating. If you're really trying to make a jewel tone, then you just want to get in there and hit it with that color. I already had some tone on the paper from the sky, so yeah. Okay, yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Now, I want that to dry so it doesn't bleed into the land. So I am gonna work on the top of the palm tree. For that, I'm gonna mix up some sap green. And I've still got my orange active from earlier. I can throw some orange into there. I see some warm tones. Where I had the yellow ochre, I'm going to put some warm cadmium yellow that I can drop into that green. And I'm going to start with the shape here. And try not to make the palm tree too perfect shape-wise. Let it come in and out, and they usually come down at a diagonal. Bring that right down to make it a little thicker at the bottom, maybe a little bit thicker here. That's not bad. I can grab a little bit of that purple that I had and drop it in to this trunk that we've made. That way we're showing a little bit of light and a little bit of dark. It is a silhouette, but you don't want it to be pure black. You don't want it to be pure green. You want it to have a little bit of character. As I come up into the tree, I'm coming in with some light stuff here, but now I'm going to start to come in with the flat brushes. I've got two of them going. I've got a 1/4 inch shader and a number 14 from Rosemary. I'm actually going to switch down to a number 8 flat from Rosemary. Give that a try. What I want to do is get the paint loaded up on the brush. Yeah. And then dry it out on the table, on my napkin. Kind of run it through all of those colors, the purple, the green, the orange, the yellow. Vary it, drop it out onto the paper towel so that you're not hitting it full force with color. I'm going to bring up the top of the tree because I dragged that out. I'm going to make the tree a little bit bigger. I've got the smaller angled shader making some marks too. I can come back in. I'm going to grab my round brush again and start to drop in tone into those dry brush marks. What happens is they'll fill in and give you some good shape. They'll fill into the shape that the dry brush has made. And I have to kind of fill in some of this shape. I don't want it to be too... It's not bad. It's a little light yet. I'm going to mix up some of that orange and some of that purple and drop it into here too, especially towards the tips. They get burned out in the sun and they get orangey. You kind of have to look at it and make some adjustments. Into that wet, I'm going to drop in some more dark. And while I have the round brush, it's helpful to do a couple little dots here and there. For some reason they really read well. It's a pretty decent palm tree shape. I am going to put some more darks in on the body. It's not bad. You're getting a little glare off of the light, so it's doesn't look perfectly right, but it's when I look at it head on, it looks like a pretty good shape. It's a passable palm tree. See if I want to do any more with it. Maybe make a couple more defined leaves. Take some of the paint out and do a little bit more dry brush. That's pretty okay. It's pretty easy to overwork these, and I don't want to do that. So, okay, I'm going to mix up the green for the ground plane. It's going to be my sap. I added sap, the Daniel Smith Sap Deep, which I hadn't used before, to my palette. It's much stronger than the sap I had in there before. So I'm adding some yellow to it, and I'm adding some orange to it to tone it down. It needs more water. All right, here we go. And there's these couple little palm bushy, low to the ground kind of shapes that break up the ground. So I'm putting them in right now with just the round brush. And I may adjust them later. I know I will adjust them. At the base of them, you just throw in some dark and put a couple more little dots in to help it read. Go right up to that water. That's looking pretty good. I'm gonna right into the wet of this, I'm going to mix some yellow and orange just to vary the color. You don't want it to be a flat color. You want to be able to drop in some tone into it. I'm going to take some darker color, drop it in right here into the bottoms of those bushy bits. As I move to the right, I'm warming up my color. Now as I get over there, I can drop in some warm dark. I'll grab a smaller brush and give some more definition to these bushy palmy bits. And they need to be even darker underneath. So I'm grabbing some Diox purple, which is a stronger purple, and dropping it in because that feels like a cast shadow or a ground shadow underneath there anyway, a little bit. And I can just, while I have this in my brush, I'm going to use the angled shader and right into that wet, throw a shadow of that palm tree. Ooh, and we are getting close. We are getting real close. Darken this up a little bit more down at the bottom. And let's see. The tree in the base is still pretty wet, so I can do some shapes that are in front of other shapes just to flesh it out just a little bit. All right, I'm feeling really good about this. I think what I want to do is just one last thing. I want to really strengthen that tone at the bottom of the clouds. It's going to make the clouds feel, the lower rainy area feel lighter. So I'm just coming in some dark at the bottom. Try to vary it so it's not one straight line. Lift it in places. Go right up to the tree, right through it. And then once you have this in place, then just come in and soften the top of it. So we've got it in down at the bottom. It's got a nice hard edge. Now here, just with a damp brush. So you've wet it, but then you took most of the tone out on a paper towel. And just come in here and do this pretty quick. You don't want this to set up too much. Even drop a little bit more dark into the bottom of it. There we go. All right. I think the only thing I want to do now, take a good look at it. I think I would like to darken up the bottom of this cloud shape a little bit, and then come in with a wet brush and soften it up. Maybe coming out of the palm tree on the other side. Yeah, I think that does it. All right. So thank you so much for hanging out with me and painting today. I hope you enjoyed this. If you are taking my classes at Mounts, you will be returning, the 10 o'clock class will be returning to the Venice painting. We're in good shape on that. And the 12:30 beginners class will be finishing the Rosy Spoonbill, at which point I think the 10:30 class after the Venice painting is going to do the still life with the white hydrangeas that we talked about, and I'll figure out something for the beginners class. So hope to see you soon at Mounts Botanical for my Tuesday classes, and I will be sharing this video with all of my students from the different places I teach, as well as my workshops and the urban sketchers. So you get an idea of what my painting style is like if you haven't had a class with me too. So hope to see you soon. Thanks. Keep painting.